back to A Well-Designed Business. My name is LuAnn Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company WindowWorks from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to Power Talk Friday. Listen, you know we talk a lot about all the different aspects of the interior design business here, right? Finance, niching, social media, all the things. And this is why on my website, we have the tab under podcast collections so that you can search by category, whether it be hiring, whether it be marketing, whether it be sales and negotiation, whatever area of the business that you are struggling with at the moment and looking for some information, assistance, help, guidance, wisdom, all the things. So you can go to that at any time and go right to the shows that address that particular niche. Now, one of the categories on this in this collection is personal development, because personal development has a really important role in our development as business owners, okay? We have to be bringing our brain along, right? Along with the acumen that we learn in our tasks. We have to consistently work on our mindset and the way we frame what we think about the success that we're creating. And my guest today, Heather Hansen, is a speaker, author, and coach who helps designers and creatives advocate for themselves, advocate for your team, your products, your services, and your ideas. And she knows that this begins believing in yourself and understanding your self-worth. Okay, we talk about that a lot here on the show also, but I have to say, sometimes we need to hear it 20 times, or we need to hear it that one different way. And a recent guest was Andrea Libros, who also talked about knowing your worth. And I got a ton of response and emails and DMs about Andrea and her content. And so the link for her show will be in the show notes, but I'm expecting the same sort of response to Heather. Okay. Her resume is impressive. She has a best-selling book, The Elegant Warrior: How to Win Life's Trials Without Losing Yourself. And her most recent book, Advocate to Win: 10 Tools to Ask for What You Want and Get It. She also has a podcast called The Elegant Warrior, okay? And it's in the Apple Top 100 career section of podcasts, all right? So I love that. And here's the cool thing. Where does all of this, come from? Well, she spent 20 years as a trial attorney, and that combined with a degree in psychology have really given her the leg up on understanding the ins and outs, the psychological nuances of advocating for yourself, and not only the influence that it has on you when you learn to advocate for yourself, but the influence it has on others. And this was borne out, and you'll hear her tell about that, how she learned this through her trial experience. Okay. So before we get into the show, I do want to thank My Doma Studio. We only have so many hours in a day. So how do you maximize your time and invest in your business without maxing out your expenses? Well, our friends at My Doma Studio have you covered. So if you would love to spend less time managing and more time designing, then I suggest that you go look into My Doma Studio. It's a powerful rendering tool, mood boards, easy product curation, and project management. Okay, head over to mydomastudio.com/a well-designed business. Make an investment in yourself and your business and take advantage of this tremendous, powerful tool that you have at your fingertips. My Doma Studio will also be sponsoring the Power Talk Friday Tour in High Point this October 21st, 2022. So if you are joining us, if you have signed up for the Power Talk Friday Tour, then you will get to spend time with Sarah Daniele, the CEO of My Doma Studio. You can learn about that at powertalkfriday.com. All right, very, 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 very excited to introduce you to Heather. Hey, Heather, thanks so much for joining me on the podcast today.
LuAnn, I'm so excited to be here.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation because, first of all, Heather, you've been referred to me by two of my favorite people, Rachel Bozick and Manuela Moreira. So high five to you ladies out there for connecting me. And secondly, we're going to talk about all the good things that you do, the books that you've written and all the things. But really, when I'm so like, you're a lawyer. I should have been a lawyer. My mother is listening to this. She's like, you're darn right. You should have been a lawyer. Like, it's like the one thing that if I had known when I was younger that I should have stuck to something, that it was possible, I think I would have been a really good lawyer.
I do too. I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, and I think you would too, because one of the main things is curiosity.
Right. See, and it is. And so it's so funny because now we're just going to take a little tangent here. Vin will say to me constantly, what does that matter? And we'll be having a discussion or whatever, and I'll be like, and I'll say, well, what did the person say that? What does that matter? I'm like, everything matters.
Yes.
All the context matters. You know what I mean?
Yes,
like, I'm looking for the leverage. I'm looking for the angle. I'm looking for the Achilles heel. I'm looking for the hot button. Everything matters.
Yep. It really does. It really does in all aspects of life.
Right? That's what I think. I'm like, how can you make a decision without all the information? So, but anyway, so I'm super glad to have you here. And I'm really looking forward to getting to know you better. I loved looking all through your website and all the things. And, at the crux of it, you said it to me off air, and I agree. You're like, you and I think a lot alike. And so what I've learned about with you, I'm anticipating the same thing. And so you started with this sentence to me that you must learn to advocate for yourself, that you're for yourself, your ideas and your business, because no one can do it better than you. And I am like, yes, sending you high fives on that. But talk to us a little bit about it. Talk about the work that you do and this belief that you have and how it shows up in the work that you do with people.
So I think that many of us, especially women, we want other people to get us more business, to negotiate our fees, to market us, to put us out there in the world. And we think, well, someone else must have all the secrets to make that happen. But the truth of it is, LuAnn, that no one can advocate for you and your ideas and your business better than you can, because no one has your experience, your heart, your passion, your talent, your smarts, your training. And so we've really got to step into this role that we are our own best advocates. And just to be clear on advocating, when you communicate, you share perspectives. And your listeners and their work, they do that all the time. They share their perspective. The client will share their perspective. When you advocate, you change them. And there's a role for both. There's a role for communication, but there's also a role for advocating. And when you step into that role as your own best advocate, your business changes and your life changes.
So in your work, in your experience, you find that this is a challenge point. It's Achilles heel of entrepreneurs. And I know you're saying, probably a good portion of women, but I think don't you believe it happens in both genders, right?
Absolutely.
Yes, right? Okay. So, but there's this, it's funny because I know with Exciting Windows, with the business coaching that we do there and all the other places, there is a point where we'll sometimes meet the owner of a company that is trying very hard to get out of sales. And and I believe it's just as you said, it's rooted in that I'm not comfortable being the one. I always call it being the rainmaker, right? And
Yep.
The thing is, the rainmaker, to your point, is the one that has the most belief in the company. And so there is always a point in our journey, depending on how large we desire to make our company, that we can evolve to true CEO. And we're not the rainmaker or the advocator for the individual sale, client, whatever it be. But for most of us, that's many, many years before we're out of that role. So what I'm saying is it makes it, to me, very clear that this is a skill set that we all have to address and learn, because we can be the one who believes the most in our company, but if we don't know how to, like to your point, change a perspective or communicate that perspective, it's lost, right?
Absolutely. And you're right. There are times later on in one's business where you want to systematize it. But
Mm-hmm.
part of that is teaching the people,
Of course.
one of the things that I really want people to understand is when you're good at advocating, you turn the people around you into your advocates.
Mm.
So that's how you turn your team into your advocates, but also, and especially for interior designers, your clients. Referral business comes because people are your biggest fans and they're advocating for you out in the world. So
Mm.
that starts with you. And yes, as you grow, you want to turn more and more people into your advocates, and you want to give your employees and your sales team and all of the people that you lead the tools to advocate for you. But first, it starts with you and your belief and your credibility, and then you can expand it. But if you haven't laid the foundation as your own best advocate, it's really hard to grow upon anything less.
100%. And the thing about it is, I always say you teach people how to treat you for sure, but you
Hmm.
also teach people how to think about you too. There's something to
Yes.
that line as well. And of course, your actions always speak louder than your words. So you can say, I can try and teach you that I'm a person of integrity, but if you are dealing with me and on more than one occasion you find that I have not dealt with you with integrity, it really doesn't matter what I tell you, right?
Oh,
But the
yes.
thing is that if you are, for example, a person of integrity, then I think it's important that if that matters to what you're selling, what you're doing, and I think it matters in everything we do,
Hmm.
then we do need to understand how to advocate for ourselves and teach people this is the thing to know about me, whether it's my design skills, my this, my that, my other, right?
Yes, and you bring up integrity, and it's so important. So I have the three C's of an advocate, and everyone always asks me what's the most important C, and I always answer it's credibility,
Mm.
because if they don't believe you, you can't win. So in the courtroom, I could be the most prepared, I could be the funniest, the nicest, the most charismatic lawyer in the room, but if they didn't believe me, they being my jury, I could not win the case. Well, you have your jury. Some days it's your clients, your customers, some days it's your child who won't eat their vegetables, some days it's your team. And if they don't believe you, you can't win either. And so credibility is so important. And you're right, it's promises made and kept.
Mm.
The promise is the words, the keeping is the action.
Mm.
It's expectations set and met. But also, and we can get into this if you like, the fastest way to build credibility is owning it when you can't keep a promise or meet an expectation. But ultimately, it all comes down to what you've said is integrity. I call credibility, and it's really that belief that is integral to every part of your business.
Well, I love that. I love those two. I love everything right there. Okay, first of all, these are great lines. Promises made and kept, and expectations set and met. Like, whoa, right? That's a T-shirt. Lisa out there, she's listening. She's like, "LuAnn, you got another T-shirt. That'll have to be yours, though."
I love it.
Expectations set and met. I love it. The other thing in there, though, that's so critical is when you said you have to own when you've made a mistake. And I know you listen to the show, Heather, so I know you've probably heard me in the last 2 years talk about how I had to step in back into window works on a much more hours per basis than I had been. But I came back in not as a salesperson. Kimberly has that underhand. I came back in as the CCO, the Chief Complaint
Mhm.
Officer, right? And the number of times, the number one tactic is when I'm getting the call, when the client has been pushed to me because it has gotten to Mach 99 and no one can, we can't get to resolution, then it's like, okay, give it to Lou. And of course, I gather this is where it is a good thing that I should have been a lawyer, right? I gather all the information, talk to the installers, talk to everybody, talk to this admin, talk to the salespeople, and I figure out where we drop the ball.
Yep.
That's the one thing I'm looking for, because then when I start that phone call, that's pretty much where I'm going to start. Hey, Mr. Smith, I'm really sorry about this. I understand that we did this, didn't do this, blah, blah, blah. Right?
Yep.
Because for me, because maybe the ultimate problem, I got a situation now, the ultimate problem isn't where we drop the ball, but I got to come there letting you know that there's two people here, two humans here, and both humans have culpability, not just you
Mhm.
because you're my bad customer, right?
Yep. It's huge, LuAnn, and it's such a credibility builder. I call it a credibility multiplier. It's like a
Mm,
magical combination of authenticity and vulnerability, and
mm,
it's disarming.
yeah.
When you say, I messed up, I mean, research shows that the leaders who are willing to say, I don't know, get more information from their team, are much better leaders, and their teams are much more successful. And I see it in the courtroom all the time. If I have an expert on the stand who's willing to admit that they disagree with the side they're testifying for on some small thing, all of a sudden the jury's like, oh, this person's telling me the truth. So
Mm,
it is huge, and it's scary, and you get better at it with practice, so it sounds like you've gotten much more accustomed to it, but it's so valuable, and
yeah.
it really boosts your credibility like a rocket.
Mm. And so, in your work with the designers that you've worked with and other creatives, do you find that this is a tough ask of them to do this, or do you find that this is one that most creatives are okay, they get it right away and they're willing to do it? What happens in the work in trying to help someone realize how valuable it is? Because just before you answer, I understand how valuable it is because I've done it the billion times. And
Hmm.
I get the difference between when I start and maintain throughout the conversation only the things that my customer has done wrong. Because usually the list is longer on their side. I'll
Yep.
be serious,
Yep.
right? But I understand the power and I've witnessed it when I love that example. Your witness on the stand, expert witness, is agreeing with the biggest part of what you have them there for. But if they disagree with a little one,
Hmm.
you've turned over that jury at least for that witness, and that's what I try to do when
Yep.
I'm dealing with a tough client. But how is it for other people before they understand the power of it?
Well, it's a great question because it really depends on the person. But I talk about credibility as a belief triangle.
Mm,
So you want your people to believe you, and that's what we're talking about here. That's where the promise is made and the expectation set. You want them to believe in you, and that's your experience, your expertise, your portfolio. And then they want to believe that you can help them. So people struggle with different aspects of this, but the owning it piece, sometimes if people are afraid to own it, they have a little bit less belief in themselves. It takes
mm,
someone with a lot of confidence, someone with a lot of belief in themselves, a lot of credibility with themselves to be able to say, I messed up, I don't know. It's
mm.
usually the people who are a little bit newer, a little bit less secure that struggle with that. And then we work on the other two sides of the belief triangle so that they can all work together to support this idea of owning it.
That's a great point, right? Because if you're feeling a little bit like you're on shaky ice in general in your wherever you are in your business journey, you feel less comfortable admitting a mistake, feeling like then now maybe somebody else will realize that you
Mhm.
really aren't good enough to be a designer or some crazy stuff, right?
Yep. Yep. That's
Uh,
exactly it. If you're lacking in belief, it's really hard to help other people believe. I always say, and you've said so much of what I say, LuAnn, you've said in different words over the years, but I always say you can't prove something until you believe it.
right.
And so if you want to prove your value, if you want to prove your credibility, if you want to prove that you are the right person for this job, you need to believe that you are.
Mm.
And when that is the littlest bit shaky, it's hard to admit a mistake because you're afraid that you're going to lose the client and maybe future clients as well.
Mm. It's so true because it's that for me it like in sales it's the takeaway, right? And it's almost it mirrors that a little bit. Like if I am and you look, you use it in sales, but you use it with 3-year-olds too. It's like, do you
Hmm.
want peanut butter and jelly, or this? No, I want ice cream. Okay, so we're not having anything then. Whatever. Like you should see me with my grandchildren. I'm like, whatever, then you're not really hungry. I'm done. Like
Right.
now. Like I'm not gonna sit there and play the game because ultimately I don't think you're gonna starve. Right? Like
Right.
like I'm not worried that this child is going to starve if they're not cooperating in that moment. So I'm just like, well, I'm out. We're done.
That's
Right.
right.
And it's the same, though, at a much higher level when you are presenting a solution to somebody. If you're not presenting it in a way that they like, I love this line, that they can believe in you because you don't really believe in it. That is something where it creates the slippery slope for the client. But when you really believe in it and they don't want to do it, it's funny. I just listened to Wingnut Social. Darla, do you listen to her
Hmm.
podcast too?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So this morning I was just listening to the episode with Maria Killam. Do you know
Hmm.
Maria? Also,
Yeah. I
she's
haven't listened to that episode, but I know Maria.
yeah, right. She's a rock star. star Maria, and it was just so funny because she was talking in the episode about when she just knows it's the right thing. She doesn't pretend it's not. She doesn't pretend like that color is really the right color. She's like, that is the wrong color. Why am I like, I'm not sugarcoating it, right? And so I think that's what it is, to your point. When you know that the design is good, when you know that the project is being executed well according to process, then you're much more able to present it so that they can believe in you, but you're also much more able to walk away and not worry. Like, it's like, well, that shouldn't have happened anyway because I know I'm in the right spot, right?
Yes. Yes. And most of the time you don't have to. So that part of credibility, I say C equals E squared. It's evidence and energy. But the energy of your belief, when you say to your grandchildren, well, then you can't be that hungry, they feel your energy that she's not going to be cajoled into giving us ice cream for lunch, right? There's like something about your energy. And it's the same thing when you say to a client, listen, this is not the right thing for you. And you say it with that energy of belief, people pick up on that energy. It doesn't even have to be in person, but it's even stronger in person. And people believe it. And then what feeds the energy is the evidence. You have all this experience. You've done projects like this before. You've developed these systems. You have this inherent innate talent. That's the evidence that sort of supports the energy, which then supports the evidence. And it's this beautiful cycle. But yes, you need to have that so that you have that strong belief in yourself and other people can follow along.
So you're right. We speak the same language. There's no question. Right?
Yes.
You just have all these great little catchphrases for it. I love this. C equals E squared and all this stuff. I'm like, you just got to think of some acronyms, LuAnn.
It does help. It does help.
But so my question is, like, I almost wish that I wasn't already in this place of belief in what you're telling me, because I feel like I know there's people listening to us that are like, great, thanks so much for that. But that's the part I struggle with. Like,
yes.
How do you help, or how do you suggest, or what is the path for somebody? Is it just literally time and experience, or what is the deal?
It's got to be. So this is probably the biggest thing that people struggle with. And I hear it a lot with the experts you talk to, talking about knowing your value and not negotiating your fee. You talk a lot about that. And that's where this fits in. You have to believe in yourself. And it's not just go out and do it. If it was that easy, I wouldn't have a job, but also we'd all just be out there believing in ourselves and helping other people believe. So what I do is when someone starts working with me, I send them something that has their name on it. So for you, it would be LuAnn's evidence journal. And part of your homework every day is to write down 3 pieces of evidence of your strengths, your resilience, your talents, your expertise. And someday, LuAnn's, it might be, I figured out how to use Zoom whiteboard. And that's evidence of my resilience and my ability to figure out technology and my patience that I can have when I have to have it. Other days it will be, I got the kids to eat their peanut butter and jelly, which is evidence of your negotiation skills and your ability to persuade people. And then some days it's going to be, I got the biggest deal of my life, the biggest sale project of my life, which of course is wonderful evidence. But when you write it down, there's something, and I prefer, the reason I give them a journal is because research shows that when you take pen to paper and you write things down, it puts itself in your brain in a different way than typing it. And there's something about writing it down. And then, I've had clients who have had to negotiate a big proposal, and I work with a lot of interior designers. I also work with a lot of luxury real estate professionals and also a lot of people who worked for LVMH and LinkedIn. So all over the board. But ultimately, they can look at that journal anytime they need to advocate for themselves for promotion, resources, or money, and say, look at all of this evidence. And now how can I communicate this evidence to this jury of clients or customers or managers in a way that will resonate with them?
That's killer. See, that's an actionable step that somebody can take. And I love that because, the trial and error and years, like... That's, like I know most people will get there over
Yeah.
the body of their career and finally understand that, oh, that's the 15th time that I've been there with a contractor who's trying to minimize me in this circle of professionals on that job site. And this time I managed to hold my own and get my voice heard. Great. That's 15 time in 10 years. Thank you,
Yep.
universe.
Yeah, right. That was really helpful. Yeah.
Right. I mean, a lot of these things I have done just by trial and error, by having this body of work. I'm, not a young person any longer, but the thing is, you want others to come along faster if possible. And I love this evidence journal because you're so right. If I just even think about the technology nightmare that I was in last week, I had 5 podcast interviews I had to cancel because my technology wasn't working. It's a long story why it wasn't working. But the thing is, I'm not one for doing this journaling stuff. Like, I was raised on woo-woo and it's all in my DNA. I don't even have to do, but I just heard that and I thought to myself, I didn't kill myself over what happened last week. I didn't be like, oh my God, I'm obviously not a real podcaster because my technology didn't work right. I actually said those sentences. I said to a couple of people, I said, believe me, I am horrified that this is happening, but I'm hoping that the track record that I have, speaks for the fact that this is not the norm. You know what I mean? Right. But the thing is, just even that simple fact on those really hard days last week, if I said, well, I did get this done. I didn't get the whole thing to connect, but I was able to get the call recorder back on the computer. Like, little things would have been, hey, you know what? So you're not really a complete dumb A when it comes to technology.
Well, and for those young people who don't have the experience that we do, that don't have the, all of the things to look at, that it's transferable.
Yes.
So I wasn't kidding when I said the time that you spent with your grandchildren. I work a lot with women who are returning to the workforce after having been away for a bit. And there's so many transferable skills. There's so much evidence of their strength and their resilience and their talent and their experience in raising a family. And I know you've done it. So you can look at that and say, I managed the family's finances. I broke up the kids' fights. I handled our schedule. There are skills in there that are evidence of your ability to do the thing that you think you can't do.
It's so true, because anyone that has raised kids, whether it's been their full-time job or the full-time job with a full-time or part-time job, it's beyond comprehension. The number of the challenges that you have in a day that, to your exact point, you have to overcome. And when you take that awareness of what you've been able to accomplish and think, oh, just do it with actual rational adults now, that's really not that hard.
It's true.
It's kind of downhill from there. If you can do it with 5-year-olds, I think you can do it with 45-year-olds.
Yes. And I say the same thing. I was a waitress. I waitressed my way through college. And I say the same thing about waitressing. Those skills are so transferable.
So true. I waitress. My parents always had restaurants. So I waitress from the time I was a kid. 8 years old, I was a soda jerk behind the counter. And when our youngest came back from her first semester of college, she had these 2 pretty good internships. So it was her sophomore year of college, her senior year of high school, and her freshman year of college in New York City on TV shows. Like, it was great. And this next year she comes back. I'm like, a new pizza restaurant opened in town. That's where you're going to work. She's like, what? I'm like, you're going to learn to waitress, sweetie, because that's a skill set that will take you wherever, anywhere you want to go, because it's everything. It's time management. It's pressure. It's customer service. It's being like the 90th on the totem pole. Like, it's all the things, right?
Yes. And it's evidence. So anyone listening, you have skills, the evidence of your ability to handle anything in your life. You just need to mine it. And part of that is writing it down in a journal every day, or looking back at your life. That's a little bit of a longer process that you might want to do, once a year around New Year's or beginning of the school year or whatever. But there's always going to be evidence. There's evidence all around you all the time. And once you're aware of it, you start seeing it everywhere.
I love it. So that's 1C, is the credibility.
Yes.
What's the other 2?
So curiosity is the first C.
Okay.
And it's funny because you are very curious, but a lot of times when people tell me that they should have been a trial attorney, they say, I love arguing. But the truth of it is, LuAnn, in trials, our openings are opening statements. We're supposed to give an outline of the case. If it's argument, we can actually get in trouble. The closing is an argument. We're allowed to argue then, but it's a small fraction of the case. And the rest of the case every day, sometimes for 2 weeks, sometimes for 2 months, all I do is ask questions.
Yeah, that's why I know I would have been good at it.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
to me, what it is I don't even need to argue with you if I can uncover enough things to create the leverage, or like I said, that your Achilles heel or my superpower. Like
Yes.
that's what it is for me. It's like just arguing. Well, we can do that for hours and days, and what is there, a referee? But if I can uncover the thing that unlocks
Yes.
it, right?
Yes.
Right?
That's it. That's it. And that takes true curiosity. And it's not just asking questions, it's asking questions with a complete openness and receptivity to the answers.
Right.
Like young lawyers will ask questions. And I know for my interior designers, it's the same thing. When you're young and you are maybe a little nervous, you have your list of questions and you put your check mark next to each question and you're like, question asked, okay. But really listening to the answer and letting it soak in and thinking, well, where does this lead me? And what am I missing? That's one of my favorite questions. What am I missing here? And, oftentimes in conflict, one of my other favorite questions is, where are they right? These are the things that type of curiosity is absolutely invaluable, especially for your listeners. And I'll give you, if I have time, to give you my favorite question for people like your listeners. It's Judge Rosemary Aquilina was the judge in the Larry Nassar case. He was the guy accused of, and he did molest all those young gymnasts back in the day.
Oh God, yeah.
And she became my friend. I watched her. I was an anchor at the Law and Crime Network at the time. And I watched her as she handled that hearing. And at the beginning of that hearing, LuAnn, only a few women intended to come forward and they didn't want to use their names and faces. And by the end, over 100 women came forward and used their names and faces. And I attribute it to this question that Judge Aquilina asked these women. It's really a request. She said, tell me what you want me to know. Not what I need to know, not what happened to you. And I think for your listeners especially, you may have a client who wants you to know something or is thinking something that is so out in left field for you that you will never find out unless you say, tell me what you want me to know about this project. Tell me what you want me to know about this room and what you're going to be doing in this room and how you're going to use this home, this space. And that question can get so much information that you can use to quote unquote win. And it's really invaluable for people who are in a field like your listeners are.
What I love about that question is do you know, and I wonder if all of our colleagues listening had the same feeling that I had when you said it. It makes you feel like the other person is actually interested in the answer.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It doesn't feel like a question that you're just waiting for me to answer so you can you can ask me another one.
Yep.
Right?
That's right.
I mean, I love that. And it's so crazy because this is one of my pet peeves when I go to panels at High Point, just saying, and all the other markets. Makes me crazy when the moderator shows up with their questions and sticks to the questions. It's like,
yes,
there was a great conversation going down that road, but okay, let's get back to question number 3, right? And every time I'm moderating a panel, when you've done it with me before or you know me well, I think you're less worried about it. But when sometimes I get invited by a PR rep or a brand and maybe it's not my topic, they're not my players, and I've been invited to moderate. These are the ones that they all want all the questions ahead of time. And I in the beginning, I used to tell them, I'm not going to give you the questions ahead of time because I don't know them until I start talking. And then I realized that felt very confrontational to them. And I thought, okay, so let me meet them where they are. Let me pretend that these are going to be the questions. And so what I do is I do try and give them the first question and the last question. And if they're strangers to me on a panel, I'll stick to that. And I say to them, in between, it could be any one of these or none of these. But if you answer this first one killer and you have a good answer for the last one, that's all anybody will remember. Don't worry about it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So, but it's that really wanting to know what is, is it A or B? It's B. Oh, Well, what is
Yeah.
it about B? Not like, is it A or B? It's B. Great. And then what happened? We got to D. It's like, wait, what happened? Why was B the answer? Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And that takes true curiosity. It's not just asking questions, it's asking questions and really receptive to the answers. And that kind of energy, when you come to someone and, as you said, that you're really interested, that they really feel seen and heard and special. I always say people want to be seen, safe, and special. And
Mm.
when they feel that way, they just pour their hearts out. Attorneys on the other side in my cases, it was hysterical. We'd get into depositions and they turn to their client and say, "You're going to think Heather's your friend, but she's not your friend." But it wasn't like I was trying to weave some spell. I just made them feel seen and safe and special.
That's hysterical that they would have to warn their clients that they're going to like the opposing attorney and they're going to think she's their friend. That's awesome. That is a witchy power, though. Let's just call it what it is.
And every one of you can have it. Every one of you can have it.
That's
it's just
it.
really an open, receptive energy of curiosity.
And so this is a great exercise, this question. Tell me what you want me to know. Before we go on to the third C, are there other tips about how to cultivate this curiosity? I mean, I have it naturally. Again, I'm just like, oh, well, what if you don't have it naturally, right?
Well, there are. So just listening is such a skill. A lot of times when people hire me to help them advocate, they want me to help them because I've done some television and I've spoken on stages. And so it's a lot about like, teach me how to present body language, tone of voice, facial expressions. And that's great. But listening is far more important and far more likely to make you a good advocate. So it's really getting good at listening. So I do a lot of meditation for some of my clients who are open to meditation because it allows me to be present in the moment instead of thinking, what's my next question? What do I have to do after this? When are we going to be done? And so that's helpful. Some of my clients don't like meditation. And so what I tell them is make it an exercise to focus on the person's tone of voice. Because tone of voice is a study out of Yale that's relatively recent that says that you can learn more about a person's emotions from their tone of voice than from their facial expressions and their body language combined. So if you're really focused on tone of voice, number one, you're listening with presence and openness and curiosity. And two, you're getting data that you wouldn't otherwise have. Maybe your client is really short and annoyed because her husband or his wife is driving them nuts in the other room. Or maybe they've had a bad day at work. You're going to be more likely to hear that and know that maybe now is not the best time for us for more budget, and have that data available to you if you're listening with pure presence.
Interesting. Two things I want to say about this that I think are really interesting. We had the camera on for a few minutes before we started the interview, and I always hang up and call everybody back and say no camera. And I could sit here by camera. My daughter's a podcaster. All the podcasters that she interviews, they all leave their camera on. It is the way to go. But it's so crazy. I feel like I pick up so much more and hear things with greater detail because I'm not looking at you and going, oh, what's happening in the background and what's this and what's that. And I feel at will to write messages to myself and to take notes and not to hold space for you while you're talking to make you feel like I'm paying attention, right? Like I'm like, no, this is, I got to get this information. So I'm not taking care of you at this moment. I'm taking care of you in the best way I know how to do it, right?
That's right.
So that's interesting because I didn't know that you could pick up more from tone of voice over body language and all of that, because there's been times that I've thought to myself, if I left the camera on, I could pick up their facial structure, expressions and stuff. But it's like, no, it just inherently to me didn't feel as comfortable or efficient. So that's the first thing that's interesting. And then the other thing is, it's funny because I wonder what you say about this. When I'm talking with somebody that's saying to me, oh, you're such a good listener. How are you such a good listener? I've said to people, try not talking until the other person has actually finished the sentence. Because I find that we mostly talk when we think we know what the rest of the sentence is. And I know that if I keep my mouth shut, now, if you're dealing with me at a cocktail party, I'm talking all over you all day long. Where I'm like, rap, 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 like that's crazy pants, right? Like, but when I'm really, if I'm on a sales call, if I'm on a conflict phone call, if I'm in a podcast interview, I'm literally trying not to talk until you're done, because that is just, okay, are you actually listening, LuAnn, or are you thinking about what you're going to say, right?
Yep. I think that that's super valuable. There's a study also that shows that when we are listening, our tongue is making little micro movements in preparation to speak. And if you actually literally hold your tongue, you become a better listener. You're able to glean more from the conversation. Now, that would be weird on Zoom if you're holding your tongue or in person. But yes, if you say to yourself, I'm going to let this person completely finish their sentence, and even, God forbid, allow for a second of silence before I answer, that will make you a better listener.
And the reason that I bring this up is because where it has served me all the years, now it serves me on the podcast, but where it served me was with selling customers, with selling window treatments. And so this, I believe, is very transferable to interior designers. And I have to say, I think that it's even more important for an interior designer over a window treatment professional in this regard. A, the project is going to have a lot more details. It's going to go on longer. It's usually going to be a lot more expensive. And I believe that there are a lot more emotional things attached to what you ultimately will provide in an interior design project than a window treatment. And if you haven't given that person that full time to express, like I love that other question, what do you want me to know, right? If you haven't given that person that full time to express it, then you might miss the pain point that they really wanted you to solve in their family room. Maybe you made their family room beautiful, but you didn't give them enough time to talk, and you didn't listen well enough, and you were finishing their sentences, so you didn't learn that, I don't know, they can't stand the TV over the fireplace because the last one was there. Whatever you missed, right?
That's absolutely right. It is, and especially for interior designers, to continue to ask questions throughout the relationship is going to get you so much information, and also allow you to collect evidence that you can then advocate for yourself to do the next project, to do the next thing, to help out with the next house. I mean, some of the designers that I work with people on multiple homes. That happens because they have asked questions and really listened to the answers and really advocated for their work and collected evidence of how they are of value to that particular client.
And also, the more you listen, the more you gather from them, to your point of advocacy for yourself. Now, when it comes time to present the solutions, when you can present the solutions in the exact language of the questions and the problems they had, right? If you're too busy glossing over and thinking about the next, okay, well, I'm going to ask her about the paint colors next, or I'm going to ask her about this next, or blah, 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 you're missing, I really want to have bookcases so I can put all my grandchildren's stuff in this. You can tell the phase of life I'm in right now, can't you?
Yes. I love it.
I love it. Pack all the toys up and stick them behind the bookcase doors. I'm like, okay, they're gone. We look normal again.
I love it. It's great.
But that's a thing, right? It's like, it's never in my life would it have mattered. And now all of a sudden, I'm so glad to have storage that I can just pull out the bins of the dinosaurs and the Barbies and put it away. But if we didn't get to talking about that, you wouldn't even maybe know I had grandchildren. How would you know? I don't have any pictures up. I don't have that kind of house.
Right. Well, and it's really interesting, LuAnn, because that takes us to the third C. That's what the third C is all about, which is compassion. So compassion for me, and there's different definitions out there, but I believe that perspective is seeing things the other way that another person sees them. And then compassion is putting that into action. So we don't always see things the way others see them. If you remember, I think it was like in 2015, there was that big internet sensation of the dress. And some people saw the dress as white and gold. And some people saw the dress as black and blue. And people couldn't understand, like, how can you not see that this is white and gold? Or how can you not see that this is black and blue? And it just shows that people can see things totally differently. And a good way to find someone's perspective is to ask them. That's the curiosity piece. But it's also a practice to say, like, maybe they see things differently and maybe their experience is different. And how can I understand that and put that into action?
What was the second? Perspective is seeing how others see them, and then compassion is what?
Putting it into action. So
Okay.
taking it. So I'll give you a great example. In the courtroom, we have a saying that if I say one word the jury doesn't understand, they don't even hear the next 10 words I say.
Oh, because they're too busy trying to figure it out. Their brain just went, what is that
Exactly.
word? What does it mean? Have I heard it before? Did I read about it?
Exactly. And for me, so I defended a lot of medical malpractice cases. So if the attorney on the other side got up and said, case is about osteomyelitis, I could watch the jury's eyes glaze over and they're thinking, I told these lawyers I don't know anything about medicine. I shouldn't even be here. I didn't want to be on this jury. I should be home. They're gone, LuAnn. But I now have an opportunity, and it's good because I always went second. So I could say, this case is about a bone infection. Now, suddenly the jury's like, she understands me. I understand her.
Yes.
I have confidence in her, and she gives me confidence in myself.
Wow.
And interior designers use words that their clients don't understand sometimes.
Right.
So and sometimes, especially for the newer ones, they think it makes them more credible. It doesn't. You want to have compassion, see things from your client's perspective, and then use words that resonate with them.
It's so funny because I remember I was probably interviewing a good 3 years on this podcast. And one time somebody said to me, well, and that's like when you get the RFQ, blah, 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 blah. And of course, look, this is not as egregious because whoever this person was, I don't recall, was talking to their peers who know exactly what an RFQ is. So I don't think in this location that was inappropriate, right? But you're right. I was like, finally I had to say, well, and here's what I do. I'm thinking, well, if I don't know what an RFQ is, probably somebody else does. And so I may as well ask. But everybody in the audience might be like, really, LuAnn?
But LuAnn, I have to tell you, that brings us back to your credibility with your audience because you're not afraid to say you don't know and own it. So these 3 C's go together. But yes, you have to be willing to ask. But as the speaker, you have to think, do these people, how do they see the world? Do they know what these words are? And acronyms are the worst. People are always, my luxury real estate agents, my gosh, the acronyms that they use, and they just don't recognize that many people don't know what they're saying and are afraid to say so.
Right. Well, that's the truth because, given this, if I were, there are a group of clients out there that if you're in your consultation, you're just saying, well, and at that point, we'll get the RFQ, blah, blah, blah. There's a group of clients out there that are not going to say to you, what's an RFQ?
That's right.
Right? They're just going to, like your jury, say, you know what, I'm not sure about this lady or this guy. And they're not necessarily going to say, this person used an acronym that I don't know what it means. They're just going to have that feeling of non-alignment with you, right?
Yep. They don't understand me. They don't understand me and they don't make me feel confident, credible. I don't believe them. I don't believe they can help me. That's that third part of that belief triangle. I don't believe they can help me because I don't understand what they're talking about.
Right. And I, like I said, you're not necessarily the client, you're not concerned with the client who would just say, what's an RFQ? You said that 3 times. That client we're not worried about. We're worried about all the others, right? That would never say that to you. And you just don't know why the project went off the rails or you never could close it. And it's that piece in there. So how did you, it's clear to me that you use this in your career as a lawyer, but it's also clear from your stories that other lawyers, this isn't like, lawyer 101. I mean, it seems like you really have upped the game here. And is this, how did you come by it is, I guess, what I'm trying to ask.
It's a great question. And I think it's a combination of things. I mean, I'm a voracious reader and I love self-help and personal development books. So that sort of has led me down this path. And then I majored in psychology in undergrad, which most lawyers don't. And I think that was far more helpful than many of the other majors I could have chosen. I also, this is an interesting little tidbit, but when I was in high school, I was about 100 pounds overweight, and that made me very tuned into what the people around me were thinking, feeling, sort of. And so I think all of that came together to recognize that if you can understand the way that the people see the world and you can help them to believe in themselves and in you, you can win. And my definition of winning is to receive something positive because you have earned it. So everyone can win. But you really, whether it's in the courtroom or the bedroom, the boardroom, the office, wherever, you can really use these tools to receive something positive.
Wow, that's amazing. And I'm writing another sentence down. Definition of win, to receive something positive because you earned it.
That's from the Cambridge Dictionary. It's not one we talk about often, and it's one we never talked about in the
Wow.
courtroom. In the courtroom, it's a zero-sum game. But in your world and your listeners' world, everyone can win. And ideally, you and the clients do win together.
Right.
And so it's a definition I love.
That's nice. Now, I'm thinking, oh, why don't you just read the dictionary more often for great lines?
Well, I love words. I mean, I think words are amazing. And so I'm always looking at what's the root of that word? What does that word mean? So for me, words are fun.
And I don't think I've asked two people this in 800 plus interviews, but you just mentioned how much you love to read. And you mentioned to me off air that you typically read 200 books a year. This is an inordinate amount of information gathering. I almost can't even say it because I'm just like, what are you doing this? But I'm very curious now. Like one of the top, I can't even say favorite because that's probably impossible. Top 5 business book, top 5 fiction book, like anything you want to share because I'm just so curious now.
Yeah. So, well, especially for what we're talking about, right? It depends on the audience and it depends on what I'm reading. I'm rereading right now a book called Drive. I think it was published in 2009. It's Daniel Pink, who I love all of his books. But Drive is about motivation. What motivates people? Because as I work with some corporations on how do we turn our clients and customers into our advocates? How do we get them to go out and be raving fans and get other people? And so I'm rereading the book because I'm looking at what motivates people to do things. And there's extrinsic motivation, which is the carrot and the oh gosh, it's like either punishment or reward.
Right.
But the carrot or the stick. But there's the intrinsic motivation, which is like, I want to master this thing. So that's a book that I'm really enjoying. And for your listeners, maybe more on point for you guys, To Sell is Human is another book by Daniel Pink. Fabulous book. His books read like fiction. They're very easy to read. And that book is all about how we are all selling all the time and how to do it better. So those are two of my favorites. I recently read a book called Silence. I think it's called, Golden. It's called Golden, The Power of Silence in a World of Noise. And I really loved that because it talked a lot about, the importance of bringing silence into our lives and having moments of silence. And for interior designers, I think it's interesting because it's the white space that makes things beautiful, right? And in music, it's the space between the notes that make music. And so that book I thought was really interesting. And then I'll just give you a third because we were talking about listening. There's a book called You're Not Listening by Kate Murphy, which is a really good book about how to be a better listener.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, and it's interesting that you've got them all at the top of your head and the authors. I mean, I would have been like, well, there was this book I read 7 months ago. It was something about listening. She was great.
Well, I mean, and I prefaced it with it's what's current, right? Like there's other books that I've read, I've got a big old bookshelf. And so it all just sort of depends on what I'm into right now. But I think To Sell is Human and You're Not Listening are two of the books that I consistently refer people to.
Wow, that's awesome. So, we did the 3 C's, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So, you know what I have to do now before I let you go?
Oh boy, what's
that?
Well,
I have to ask you, is there anything that you want to tell me that you
want
me to know?
I love it. I love it. Listen, what I think that I just turned 50 yesterday.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you. And I feel like the reason I'm here for the rest of my life is to help people who don't feel like they are their own advocates, that don't feel like they know how to do it, to help them to do it. Because the people who are really good at it aren't always the best they're not always the best interior designers, but they're the best at advocating for themselves. So they get all the work. And I want the people who are a little bit less comfortable with it. And it's not the introverts. Extroverts are often really good at advocating for others and not as great at advocating for themselves. So I just want the listener, you guys, to walk away with this knowing that you are your own best advocate. And it's a skill to learn, just like any other skill that you've learned in your life. You can get better at it. And if you apply those 3 C's, you will get better at it.
I love that. I love that. Your observation is so well made because it's not a matter of introversion, extroversion. It has
Yes.
nothing to do with that. It has to do with what you said, your belief in yourself, and starting there and then building the belief, in your services and all of the things. I mean,
Mhm.
just so well said. I mean, God, I'm going to tell you what, I could talk to you all darn day. I can tell you that right
Well, I
now.
do too. I listen to your podcast like mad. I just think that we have so many thoughts. We think the same way. And so I was so excited to come on.
Yeah, well, I am so grateful to both Rachel and Manuela for, introducing us. And I really, just thrilled. And I love that you have the hows behind the what we should do, because these are tough hows. These are tough
Mhm.
things to address without just the journey of experience. And so it's so great that you have the actions to take. And I just appreciate you so much for sharing all of this information with us today, Heather.
Oh, LuAnn, it's my pleasure. It really is.
All right, let's pick it apart, right? So, first of all, I love how Heather looks at it as the 3 C's of advocacy. The first one being curiosity. And the way she talks about is curiosity is asking questions, right? Really thinking about the things that you need to know in order to be able to present the best solutions to your clients, right? But a big part of asking questions is listening. Okay, and really focusing. And Heather said that she noticed when she was doing this, that she was really in a space of being receptive, that the people that she was communicating with felt seen and safe and special, right? And she realized that this made her very successful in building rapport with her own clients, with the jurors, and with her attorney adversaries, right? So think about that feeling when you have felt seen, safe, and special by someone, just by the way they communicated with you in a conversation, the way that you could tell that they were listening. This is a tremendous gift to give to someone. And it is worthwhile cultivating this. All right. And then before I move on to the second C of advocacy, I want to point out that great question that Heather suggests that we can use. Tell me what you want me to know. Tell me what you want me to know. You can see how that would be important for her as a trial attorney, right? Somebody's life is on the line or whatever it is. Tell me what you want me to know. But I also know that it works for us too. And my daughter Christy has her podcast, Sass Says, and she ends every interview by asking them, is there any question that I didn't ask you that you wish I had? Right? Is there anything that you wish that we had a chance to talk about? And that is a version of tell me what you want me to know. Right. And it really does. Every time I hear Christy say it on her podcast, Sass Says, I always think, wow. And I think, wow, I want to steal that. When I don't. But I always think, what an honoring question that is. You've just come, you've spent your time with me. I've asked you all the things that I thought were important, but what is left? What is there that you want to share? And so Heather's version, tell me what you want me to know, I think translates very nicely to your intake phone calls and your discovery calls, also on your initial consultations, and at any time that you end a meeting with a client, where you just say, is there anything else that you want me to know? Giving them that space to be seen, heard, and feel special, right? Okay, the second C of advocacy, according to Heather, is credibility. And this one is about belief, right? This one might be the trickiest one of us because it's hard to sometimes really believe in yourself and what you're saying. But if you don't believe yourself, then who else can? And so how do we do this? It reminds me of the recent conversation with Andrea Libros that I mentioned before in the intro about knowing your worth and stop doubting your talents and your skills, right? You need to just make a switch sometimes. You need to just sometimes look in the mirror and say, objectively, this is my skill set. I objectively can do this. And your garden variety human sitting at the other side of the table from me cannot do these things. So therefore, you start to settle in that awareness that, yes, I can do this. I am worthy of this. I am the expert in the room. And then the more that you live in that space, the more credible you become, right? Now, Heather is saying you need to keep the promises you make, okay? Because if you don't, then that's where the credibility slides. So it can't just be, looking in the mirror, the mantra, I can do this, and you really can't. Like, you got to go get the skill sets, right? So you got to know the back end of running your business. You got to know your design chops are good. You have to do all that. But my point is so often I meet you and you have these skill sets, but you don't trust in yourself. You don't have that belief in yourself. And then that translates in a loss of credibility. And another thing that Heather said that I love, that definition of a win that she lives by, that it's from the Cambridge Dictionary, is to receive something positive because you earned it. And that is a win. And whether that positive thing is someone's approval, someone's love, loyalty, support, whatever it is, if it's positive, it's a win. And I have to say, this supports a conversation that I had recently on the other podcast, Window Treatments for Profit, with Elizabeth Gertis. We talked about how important it is to be proud of your accomplishments, how big or small they are, because it's something that you worked at and achieved, and you really... there's two steps here. One is acknowledgement. I acknowledge to myself that I technically am capable of doing these things. And then this other step that Elizabeth and I talked about was the reflection of it is, these are the objective things that I have accomplished. And, I'm pretty darn fantastic. Okay? So don't forget to do that. As a matter of fact, it's so funny because before I started recording this, I have all these things on my wall next to me. I have my vision board and I've got these little quotes and everything. And I have to turn around because I did notice this one before I started. And I just have to glance up. And now I have to move my microphone and all the things. And I wrote this 6 years ago. It's in my handwriting. And that means to me that I wrote it because when I have other things on here that I credit where I got it from. And this one says, practice, acknowledgement, and gratitude. Honor your life's work. Reflect and acknowledge on your success. Reflect and revel in your success. And then I just end it with reflect and acknowledge. Okay, so it's crazy that I'm talking about this in the outro, and I literally just came across that on my wall 15 minutes before, and I don't remember the last time I looked at it. So these things are important, okay? All right, because why? Because they help build your own credibility in your mind so that you believe it and so that you come across as credible. That's the whole tying it in a circle there, all right? And then the third C is compassion, right? She said that this is the perspective in seeing how others see things, right? Which maybe this person sees something differently than me. They have different experiences. How can I relate to them? Because the reality is it's not a maybe, it's a definite. Every one of us sees things from a different perspective. You've had the conversations where you think you've been completely neutral about expressing an opinion on something and somebody else looked at you and said, well, maybe this only happens to me. That's a little aggressive. And I'm like, what? I was just answering your question. Right? I mean, this is the point that we do process things differently. And you must develop this cultivate this this ability to be compassionate. And I think where it can sometimes show up is in the Facebook groups for you designers, right? Somebody will come in and say, this client, this, that, and the other thing. And then boom, everybody's on drop the client, fire the client, red alert, red flag, blah, blah, blah. And there's a lot of times where I'm just thinking like, could we just step back for a second? Could we just think about this in a different way? What if we showed compassion to this particular client first and understood that maybe their question was just a genuine question from not understanding your process, which, by the way, goes back to you. It's on you. That's your accountability, right? But in the moment, just giving benefit of the doubt and saying, not sure. That felt a little stingy there, what you just said to me or what you asked, or I feeling a little threatened by what you said or asked. But what if my first response was, I'm not sure what you meant by that. I'm not sure what you're trying to tell me by that. Would you say it again in a different way? Right? Because I can tell you, I know that happens. Like now I've gotten better at it. You know, I'm going to be 60 years old in a minute, right? But younger LuAnn, oh yeah. Just, talk and walk and do all the things and, oh, that bothered you? I didn't know, right? So, there are, whatever it is, whatever someone's perspective is, it's just 100% definitely not ours. And so Heather is talking about having compassion for those places where we can understand that there's other thoughts going into this. And when we make up what we think those thoughts are, that doesn't serve either one of us. When someone decides that I've just been, Jersey aggressive, that doesn't serve either one of us. Now I have to make adjustments, right? In order to, you've heard the story about LuAnn is not yelling at WindowWorks, right? But the thing is, on the other side of it, if you just make an assumption about what I'm saying instead of just really taking my whole persona, oh, like she's pretty crazy all the time. Like it's not just this 1 minute, right? Like that's giving compassion to, is she really trying to be aggressive right now or, forceful or, opinionated, or is this just her MO? Okay. So you have to do that with your clients too. Is this really out of character, or is this something where you're feeling a little insecure about a process or an area and you want to say that they're trying to come at you a certain way, when really it's a lot of times when we analyze it, it's us being sensitive because we know that we've got a gap there. And so it works both ways. We all have to just think about the other person. And I think that, Heather's 3 C's are awesome. I love them. Curiosity, credibility, and compassion. If we could practice these seriously on a regular basis, how much better would we all be as individuals and in our experiences and dealing with everybody? Totally love it. So before I go, a shout out to Rachel Bozick and Manuela Moreira for introducing Heather and me to each other. But I also want to share with you, after we did our interview, it turned out that Heather and I are both part of what's called heroic public speaking. And we found this out by, I think I commented in the Facebook group, or she did, and we were just like, whoa, wait, we know each other. And I'm knee deep into heroic public speaking right now. It's a year-long training course that I highly recommend, by the way. But you can only get into it by referral. And so, I just am really literally knee deep into it and meeting every month with the group and loving it. And it's on my brain. And then to find out that I had such a great conversation and connection with Heather, and to find out that she's part of this amazing organization was just like, well, there's a slam dunk on that. So Heather, I know we're now friends forever. That's all I'm trying to say. And thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate your time today. I appreciate your insights, your energy. And thank you for showing up and listening. You know that I just 100% give you the biggest virtual hug ever for showing up each week and listening to the show. Decide to be excellent. Thank you for joining me today. This podcast is a production of LuAnn Nigara, Inc. If you want to know more about me, my books, or LuAnn University, go to LuAnnNigara.com. And if you are interested in having WindowWorks help you with your next window treatment or awning project in the New York, New Jersey metro area, go to WindowWorksNJ.com to learn more. Have an excellent day.